Hello and welcome back. Today we're going to be taking a look at how to use contextual binding with the StructureMap inversion of control container. Now, in the previous episode we took a look at how to wire up StructureMap in two ways. One, how to do it via the configuration file, and the other with the DSL syntax that the framework also allows. We're going to take that example one step further today, and we're actually going to add a second instance of an ice soda, and we're going to make sure that the consumer can choose which type of soda they want at runtime. So let's go ahead and just kind of do a recap of what we did last time. Last time we created ourselves a consumer. A consumer is a person who consumes an ice soda and will basically answer one of two questions. What type of soda am I drinking and how many calories do I have? And we created the ice soda interface. It has a name and a calories property, nothing major. And we created a Dr. Pepper class that inherits off the ice soda interface. And Dr. Pepper implements name and calories as well. Let's go ahead and create a new class that implements the iSoda interface. And this is going to be the Diet Coke. And this is we're just going to have this return Diet Coke. And Diet Coke's only going to have 99 calories. So we've wired up our Diet Coke as well as our misspelled calories. We've wired up our Diet Coke as well as our Dr. Pepper, and we now need to go over and set up the binding so that we can actually at runtime determine if a Diet Coke or Dr. Pepper should be implemented into our consumer, injected into our consumer, excuse me. Now I've already taken the liberty of creating a simple UI that will allow us to determine at runtime what a user selected and kind of show us visually what we wanted. Now the first thing we're going to need to do is we're actually going to want to set up StructureMap so that we can actually tell it what to do. And well, there's actually two different ways that we can do contextual binding with StructureMap, and we'll take a dive into both of those. So the first thing I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to wire up all my dependencies with inside StructureMap. So the first thing I want to do is set up my consumer, because without a consumer being wired up I'm not going to be able to create anything. And then we're going to wire up our dependencies for the iSoda interfaces. And I'm going to go ahead and give my Dr. Pepper a name, and I'll call it Dr. Pepper. We're going to do the same thing for our Diet Coke. Now that we've wired these up, I should be able to create an instance of my consumer and then have it return back something. But before we do that, we need to actually wire up a little bit extra code real quick. Because we want to do this with contextual binding, I actually want to, at runtime, determine what type of soda the user wants. So let's go ahead and create a private method here that returns a string. And this is just going to be a simple if statement to determine which radial button was selected. We're simply going to return back soda type. So So now we've got our helper method. Let's go ahead and do our wiring for us. Now the first way, and might be the easiest way to determine at runtime which type you want, is to use the object factory.setDefaultInstance. Now there's other ways to do this. But right now we'll start off this way, and then we'll show you the second way later by using profiles. And here if I do object factory.getInstance of consumer, let's run this real quick and see what happens. If I've done all the wiring correctly, I should be able to choose the type of soda I want. So let's do regular. Click Give Me Some Soda. And it's the Dr. Pepper. If I click Diet, it tells me Diet Coke. Well, how did that actually work? Because I told it at runtime that when I'm asking for an ice soda, use the default instance of Dr. Pepper or Diet Coke, depending on what was returned from the helper method. Well, that's one way, and that's a pretty easy way. But what if you have a whole series of objects that you want to swap out based on, configuration? Maybe I'm running as, a debugger instance versus a production instance, and I want to actually return different objects back in debugger versus production. Doing set default named instance would be pretty expensive because you have to go through on every interface and set it. Not necessarily the most practical way of doing it. So another way you could actually go about doing it is by creating profiles within StructureMap. And to create a profile, it's pretty straightforward. We'll do StructureMap configuration.createProfile. And I'm going to call this Dr. Pepper. And we'll have this go ahead and call this the Dr. Pepper profile. And I'll go ahead and say for Dr. Pepper profile, for iSoda, use the concrete type, Dr. Pepper. And I can do the exact same thing for the Diet Coke. So I've set up two profiles. Now instead of saying set default instance, I'll say object factory dot profile equals soda type. If I run this, I should get the exact same results. So we'll choose Diet, got Diet Coke, and I've got Dr. Pepper. Two different ways to achieve the same goal. Now the one nice thing about using the profiles is I can set up all these things ahead of time for entire sets of changes that I want to swap out at runtime. Using the set default instance, that's for one or two at a time. Other than that, it's going to get pretty painful and pretty expensive. So what have we learned today? We've learned how to set up our dependencies for contextual binding so that we can determine at runtime which objects or concrete objects that we want our IOC containers to return to us. It's pretty straightforward, pretty easy, and with minimal changes you can get it up and running very easily. So I hope you learned something. Till next time.